Hello, welcome to the Overshare Pamphlet. My name is Robin. I'm the host of this one-man show, coming to you every Monday, 6 a.m. UK time. And today, we're finally back onto some messy pop star business. And I don't know if you've been online for the past week or so, but Sabrina Carpenter has become the topic of conversation. Mostly deriving from her announcement of her new album coming out late August. That was of course the starting topic, I guess. But what really I think created a huge conversation, a huge controversy online was the cover art for the album, and I guess it generated a lot of discourse on whether she's taken the sexy bombshell shtick and the on the nose sexuality thing too far or not. And I have a lot of thoughts on this topic because I think things are going in a very interesting direction now. I mean, Sabrina's coming off of her very highly successful album cycle of short and sweet with two mega smash hits, and the entire album selling super well and having chart longevity as well. And yeah, I mean, very intrigued to see how this goes and this plays out when the album comes out. But before we get into all the details and also into her Rolling Stone interview 3 days ago, songs of the week. Now, first, I already know what I want to start off with, and this is a song called Superstitious by an Indonesian girl group named Nona. And not Nona Nona as in Italian nonna, but it's N-O space N-A. But it's you needed to clarify that to all my Italians or or the Americans who say Nona. It's not that, okay? Just lay off. But Superstitious is, I believe, their third song, or second, depending on when it was released. I think it overall is one of the three songs that they have in their discography. That's it. It's just they're a relatively new group under 88 Rising, and despite being an Indonesian group, I think all of their songs as of now have been in English, and they are indeed the moment, I would say. It just, I think the way I came across them, I've seen their name around for a bit, but I have not explored the music until this week, because I was on vacation and all that stuff, so I didn't really have time to delve into music. But yeah, so I was very impressed with, first of all, the visuals, the music videos and everything. They're very, sultry and, beach vibes and very Indonesia, if that makes any sense. Very East Asian, tropical type of environment, which is very, very cool to see. Very refreshing, I think, for a change of pace, I guess, for these types of groups. But yeah, so I really enjoyed the music video. I really enjoyed the choreography in their the dance practice that they put out for the song. But overall, I think what really sold it, is just the music. It's just undeniably catchy and very somewhat fresh, because it is still an 80s or a throwback type of moment that they're doing, but they're doing an 80s R&B revival, I guess, which is also sort of what Doja Cat is about to delve into with their new album, hopefully coming out soon. Damn it, we've been waiting for ages now. That teaser of Jealous Type has been replaying on my feed every single bloody week, but we want the song out, please. But anyways, 80s R&B, new, I guess, for the revival thing. 80s revival music has been, around since the pandemic or something like that. So I've grown tired of it, but more like 80s disco and like pop music. I'm tired of that. And I'm glad that we're going in this direction, I think, because the 80s R&B is just something else, something different, something very, very, very cool. And I would say um, energetic. It does have like that summer feel to it as well, which I think is like very fitting for this release and like this moment. But yeah, I mean, apart from the 80s R&B and also Indonesian 80s R&B basically, because also it's taken, there was already a moment in the 80s in Indonesian R&B where they've been doing these things. So that's also homage, I guess, to their own roots. Um, but I think what really elevates the song is also just this mash of components, like the group performance, K-pop style of dance performance, which is, now being very much finally adapted by several different labels outside of Korea. I mean, I'm talking about, of course, Western groups and not Western groups as well, but it's following that, you know, rich experience. And it's not simply the song, but it's also like, the performance and the choreo and the visuals and the multiple videos and the different angles and all that stuff, and that's incredible. But also, I think the level of, you know, I guess detail in the production itself, like the I think also sort of derives from K-pop in a way. The switching up the song, um, at a certain point just to keep your interest in the song. Like it's not a simple song that is like or a simple radio hit that is produced just like be palatable and all that stuff. I mean, the song is, I would say, it achieves the best of both worlds in the sense that it is a very palatable, catchy pop R&B type of track, but I think it also has a bit of a extra sauce in it that I think just takes it to the next level. And I'm talking about, of course, the outro of the song. So good. They slow the tempo down and they go into like a more sultry, um, you know, type of production. Very, very effective, very memorable. It's almost like, I don't know. I feel like definitely takes the song to a different level, and I beg you to listen to them because it's just insane. You can find these songs as usual in my playlist of the month called the Overshare Pamphlet, Songs of the Week dash month and year that the episode comes out in. But yeah, but also apart from these songs, the song specifically, they have the other two songs that they put out, and they're both equally as interesting and catchy, and they're promising. I think also overall like very cohesive sound wise. They all have this like throwback R&B sound, which is just insane. Love it. Loves it, babes. Loves it. Now, what do I want to talk about next? I want to include. I think I want to include this other group, other girl group, that I actually don't know anything about. But the group is called Say Now. I think it's just a three-member group. Um, I assume based in the US. And this song is called Break by Break. Um, Now, the riff, there's a guitar riff, and it's definitely also, again, like R&B influence, like Destiny's Child type of situation, a bit of reminding of Flow, the group as well. The guitar, acoustic guitar in here is very 2000 R&B, but also has some country. Hear me out. A bit of a country riff, I guess. Most of it is not the actual. It's not actual country, melody in it, but I think the riff itself is just very, very much reminding me of like a country song. Very interesting. But just, I think, again, here the girls are shining. There's a lot of very interesting, I think, production value added to the song, and just very nice and like summery. I think this is the type of like music that you could hear, you know, going around in a car and all that stuff, and just like very nice. I think the type of songs that reminds me the most is like what was it, like jump, no, actually no, sorry, Destiny's Child music, I think was the overall. um yeah, I think something like that. Charlie's Angels, come on. Something of the sort. I do really enjoy the song a lot. I think I haven't really checked out the video personally, but I've been putting it like back to back with Superstitious, so I think it's a great sign that it is a great song indeed. And just, just you wait, just you wait. Um, so I think overall it's also a great moment for girl groups to be like shining again once more. I think they've just been dominating it completely. So yeah, I mean, pay attention to these girls because they are coming for everybody's neck. I mean, maybe we'll be oversaturated, but who cares? I'm living in the moment. So yeah. Um, what do I want to talk about next? I do want to talk about um, I Love You by Marina. This is more on the. This song reminds me a lot of like Fruit and a bit of maybe ABBA a bit, that era of music. Um, and it's of course coming out of her album Princess of Power. Uh, but I think overall this song is really really catchy. I love it. Very summery, I would say. I think it's another highlight from this album. I still think it's no Cantissimo. Cantissimo is the moment, I think, overall. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's a really great, great track. I think overall very catchy, very interesting. Um, a lot of cool, like, careless, a bit of a carefree moment from Marina. And I would really recommend also watching the music video because it's actually very funny as well. But yeah, I mean, hidden gem in the album, I think. I definitely think it reminds me a bit of Fruit or album Fruit. And Fruit the song maybe even. But yeah, she's in her element. She's doing that. She's doing that. And yeah, last one I want to talk about is Sue Me by Audrey Albert, and that's it. I'm just gonna put it there. I just like literally discovered it today, and I've been sort of listening to it, and it's like very synth pop, but silly lyrics, and it's like something about like I was like, well, I can't remember, but it's a unknown. This is the only song this artist has ever put out. I just came on TikTok for me, and I just had to like was like, what is this? But give it a shot. Very mysterious song. No description on this because I cannot formulate my thoughts on this one yet. But I think it's gonna be a fun one for y'all to listen to. It's like very synth pop, silly, confessional songwriting. Maybe that I could describe it as that. I guess, yeah. But yeah, give it a go. Give it a go. Anyways, now that we're done with songs, time for the tea. Time for the real story of the day. So where do we begin? I think we can begin with what's happening online, I guess, right now. So, as I said, Sabrina Carpenter, not too long ago this week, she announced her new album coming out, well, I think 26th of August, something like that. But basically, end of August. And I think this was to many people's surprises because I myself included was not ready for this. I thought, and I was actually hoping that she was gonna take a little break because she's been pretty much everywhere ever since a huge massive success of Short and Sweet. Like, I'm talking not simply about touring and the songs being still charting and doing super well despite like the album being almost 1 year old. But I think also what came with it was hand in hand with the huge success, of course, is like, product placements and advertisements and a bunch of different things that are putting her on the map everywhere basically. And she's been pretty much on the public's conscience for a bit, so that's that. but I don't think it's like, so yeah, I was hoping basically that she was gonna take a back seat and have a bit of a chill moment and disappear a bit and be a bit more mysterious. Not to say she should. I'm just saying, like, longevity wise, of course you can do whatever you want, but I think you run every time someone does this, they run into like a risk of being overexposed and a bit easy target for the public, which I think sort of was partially what led to this controversy happening in the first place, and I'm gonna get to that. But I do think that since she was so much on the internet already, this was a bit of an overexposure, maybe. But at the same time, I kept on thinking about it and was like, maybe her case is a bit interesting as well because she's had so many different albums, like before her proper, breakout with. Well, I guess part of it was emos I Can Stand, but Short and Sweet was her proper breakthrough into the public's conscience. So I think this is like sort of this new album that's coming out in August is you can sort of like categorize it as her sophomore album, and the sophomore slump, curse and all that stuff. And I think being so quick with it might be, in a way, working in her favor to like get rid of I don't know, I guess the pressure to like follow through in like with a proper moment. I guess this like feels, at least to me as well, sort of like an evolution of Short and Sweet in terms of sonics and in terms of visuals and everything. It still feels sort of adjacent. From now, it feels to me a bit more country from the only offering that we've had, which is Manchild. But yeah, maybe this is like a way for her to just like, get rid of that pressure. And if you, I guess, like are quick with it, you can basically, I don't know, maybe make it feel like it's an extension of Short and Sweet instead of, having it stand on its own two legs. Basically, that's what I was thinking. But at the same time, what I'm worried about is that, if this is the pace you're going to release music at, which is like completely up to her, of course. I mean, that she talks about it in the Rolling Stone interview as well. I think you have to be also worried though that people get tired very easily, and I think the attention span is of course a big problem here. But if you feed also a fear, if you feed people too quickly, they might just eventually brush you under the rug, if that's even possible. But I think all these worries are definitely valid in a way, which in a way makes me explain why she went for this cover art and this huge situation that exploded online. Anyways, so basically, yeah, what am I alluding to? Basically, she posted this cover art together with the announcement of the album, and in the cover art, she's basically on four legs. On all fours. On all fours, on the in a hotel, it seems, basically like a motel or something, and she is being held by her hair by a random man that you don't see the face of, but it's a random man basically taking her by the hair, right? And I personally thought it was quite cunty. Like the image itself, it was like, oh, interesting. And immediately the first thing you think, I guess, is like, oh, this is Sabrina Carpenter, because it's like, her sexy but on the nose type of like, humor and image that she's been building up with Short and Sweet. And I certainly fall into this camp where, like, at least I certainly saw I thought of that. And I think what really made it flare up even more is the name of the album, which is man's best friend. Yeah, man's best friend. Alluding to a dog, basically, right? So we don't know yet, of course, because the album hasn't come out. But I think people, and myself included, thought that she was equating herself to being a dog, like that's the comparison, But I think for me personally, the way I read it and the way I saw it and the way I interpreted it was, oh, this is her sort of luring people in, but also, making fun of it and playing it silly and, being on the nose, but also being cheeky and being humorous about it, which is her whole brand. And by the way, this is not the first time she's done something like this. Like, she's done it multiple times already in a concert, the Juno poses and all this stuff, lyrics that I've already talked about in my episode when I covered the album and all that stuff. And I think I said that's her brand, and that's what she's carved herself out in the music industry for. So I don't think it was anything out of the ordinary for me, at least, seeing it. But I do understand where people's concerns are coming from. I mean, everyone is, of course, entitled to their own opinion, and if you feel sort of, triggered by this, it is totally valid. Like, it's, of course, a valid experience to be, feeling, objectified and all that stuff is just an experience that women especially go through very often. So I understand that side of the argument, but I also think it's very, like, have you guys watched Baby Girl? That's why, like, I've been thinking about this whole time, and I think a Vogue article also, weirdly enough, also referred to it. So it was like, so we thought of the same thing. But the whole movie is about basically him being, sort of shamed for being submissive, basically, right? Like, she's coming, like, this very powerful lady is coming to terms with, like, her sexuality and, like, being repressed her whole life, and sort of feeling ashamed of her passivity and wanting to be a sexual object and all that stuff. So that movie, I think you guys should watch that to probably understand what this is hitting as well. I do understand it's, like, a bit glamorized the way it's, like, the shot and everything, but also I personally, like, people were throwing, setting back feminism 100 years and all that stuff. It's like, whoa, this is, I thought we moved past this. Like, it's not, I think a woman being comfortable with whatever her sexual desires are and her image is feminism and is empowering. But I understand that everyone feels comfortable with something like this, and it made me really, scratch my head. Like, whoa, so have we gone back to, like, the public, as the public, going back to, like, being very conservative and very, ashamed of seeing. I mean, she's received these comments, of course, her whole, short and sweet roll of it as well. But I think this has been very much heralded by, taken forward by women specifically this time around. So it wasn't simply, like, families or whatever saying that it is inappropriate for their children or whatever, but it's actually her female fans, I guess, some of them critiquing her for being, taking this, like, joke too far, basically, right? And I think personally that this is like, mostly also happening because of I would say the overexposure that she's had, and the, sexy bombshell, as I said, a shtick that it was a short and sweet thing. So here she's keeping this trend going, but people are getting, fed up with it, and they are now, they want something different, or, like, they want something a bit more serious from her, which is, I think it's wrong for her to do it. She shouldn't be, serious. I think her brand is really working well, but I do think that if she took a bit of time off and came back with, like, something similar to this, would have been totally fine, I think, personally. But yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting discourse. I personally don't feel any sort of way about it. I just feel like it's very typical Sabrina, but also I understand why they did this, because, like, it is a bit of controversial image, and it is supposed to create a sort of, like, evoke sort of emotion in it, and so marketing wise, definitely getting a lot of attention. So, and that's about, like, this is what I was talking about before, is like, I guess, like, a good old controversy and, like, good controversial moment, like, art and everything else, cover art and everything else, is probably a good strategy to, like, keep the interest going in this album. Because if she went, like, a very boring, and not boring, but, simple route, or at least she repeated like the same cover art as Really Sweet, I don't think people would have been as interested in the album. But now there is a topic of conversation, I think, that people are all gravitating towards, and it's about this album, right? So marketing wise, interesting choice, interesting, and definitely like a tactic that's been working, I think, because everyone's been talking about this bloody issue. But yeah, it really depends now on how the music is going to go, and like how it's going to be received, like music wise. But I guess only time will tell. That's the part I'm just worried about, that it's gonna be more of the same as Short and Sweet. And I do like Short and Sweet, but I can always, like, it just came out a year ago, you know what I mean? So we'll see. We'll see about that. I mean, she talks about this in the article, so I'll, you know, go through her thoughts on releasing an album so soon and everything else. But yeah. So yeah, I mean, of course, I also want to say that I don't want to substitute my thoughts, to women's, or like I don't want to pretend like I know what women need to, like, feel when it comes to these images and everything else. I do think, however, it's very funny how quick we are to switch as a culture in general from being empowering about her, and then like, oh, she's owning it, and she's like taking the sexy thing, the sexy shtick to this level, and she's owning her own sexuality and all, and it's empowering, or yeah, and then as soon as we had enough, we just like switch up immediately, which I'm not saying it's the case for everyone. Like, some people are genuinely like triggered by these images, I think that's what they're saying online. But I think a lot of people are also just raising concerns just to like raise concerns, and like just to argue and whatever. But anyways, so let's talk about the Rolling Stone cover and an article. Again, the cover art is also very sexual, very doll-esque type of image, and lingerie, and she's half naked, basically, super long hair, Rapunzel, period. But basically the whole interview was written by the interview was done by Angie Martocchio, I think, and she basically interviewed her multiple times in London, and then in New York, and then by phone between March and May, I assume, of 2025. So yeah, so it's a pretty recent interview that of course it wasn't revealed until the album was announced, so it goes hand in hand with the announcement. And there's a lot that transpires this interview. I think most of all it's like an interview that is meant to showcase her as a person, because there's a lot about like music taste and her story and what she likes to drink and eat and all that stuff, and like how she likes to relax and all that, and her writing process and everything else. So there's a lot of those foundational elements, I guess, to it, if like you're a newcomer or something, and you want to like know her better, I guess. But also there's a lot that the parts that I really enjoyed, I guess, that I really found interesting were what she discusses, the quick succession between these two albums, and also the public perception of her and everything else. So yeah, she the article opens with like talking about her recent success and like the super high highs of Short and Sweet, and her Disney past as well, and the road that she followed to get here. So yeah, there's a part then when Jack Antonoff, famous collaborator now of Sabrina, and also Taylor Swift and everyone else, that where he says that basically like he really centers what really her selling point is, basically like her quick wit and like how funny she is, and how she can quickly throw a joke and after saying something very deep or whatever, and that's like what really makes her stand out. And I think it's totally right. Like, she has the sensibility of a songwriter, I guess, but also she goes the extra step with like the joke and like the humor that she's very famous for. So that's incredible. I think it's it's what we've been all talking about, and it's so super right. So Jack seems to be also very involved now in this album, and he was involved in the first single, Man Child. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm expecting more Jack songs, I guess, here on this album, and they do say that in the article that the process started off sort of like, actually, well, the process never stopped basically from Short and Sweet to this, basically. Like, it's she kept on, producing art, and like she was in a very generative space, and she says at some point in the interview that she was reflecting on past pop stars, and she references a lot Dolly Parton as well as being one of her big influences, saying that back in the days, people used to put out albums every year, like 10-track album every year or something, and she's saying that basically now it feels right for her to do that with this album. That she feels like she's learning to listen to more to her instincts, and she's already basking in the success of Short and Sweet, and she doesn't feel like she has to necessarily concede to like standard rules and everything else. And I do find that compelling and everything, but what I do wonder is, how how is your longevity going to fare in that sense? Like, if you double down so quickly with it, I'm scared that she will get done and dusted after this era. But we'll see, I guess. It really depends on what the content of the album also is, and how other singles fare. But yeah, and but at the same time, I'm like, you know what? You do this. You can do whatever you want. Like, you literally are at the peak of your career, and you should, continue with this and do whatever it feels right for you, and that's beautiful to see, and I support that. I mean, I'm still going to support the album anyways. I'm still going to listen to it, of course, because I'm just looking critically, I guess, from just marketing perspective, I guess. I don't know. So she talks a lot about that. She talks a lot about also, like, Dolly Parton giving her advices, and like being her other half, and being her older version or whatever, and that's very cute and funny. And then she talks briefly also about Man Child. Jack Antonoff also chimes in saying that it's the best song they made, and she said that this song comes out of like a more spontaneous writing session rather than like the pre-planned ones, and this song felt very natural for her to write, and very easy for her to like put out. And Jack Antonoff says that in this writing session she wrote 3 songs in total, and these 3 songs signaled for him the start of a new project for Sabrina. Like, it was clearly a new identity that was being formed with these 3 songs, and it was the album just came naturally after these 3 songs were written. So I'm very curious to know what are the other songs. The only very distinctive element I can see in this song from like sets it apart from Short and Sweet is like the very heavy country element in this that was sort of like touched upon with Slim Pickings, for example, also produced by Jack Antonoff, by the way. But yeah, so interesting stuff. So yeah, I mean, the interview does also a great job of showing her humor and her very funny personality, and her on the nose nature, I guess, which is like like the curse words and all that stuff, and the very relatable part of her. But yeah, I find it very interesting when she said like if I really wanted to, like she says, I could have stretched out Short and Sweet much longer, but I'm at a point in life where I'm like, wait a second, there's no rules. I'm inspired to write and make something new, and I would rather do that. Why would I wait 3 years just for the sake of waiting 3 years? It's all about what feels right, and I agree with that. But also, you can write an album and just drop it at the right moment. Maybe, I don't know. I still don't know how this is gonna fare. I'm very like so confused because I was not expecting Sabrina to come back this fast. So we shall see. We shall see what happens. I'm very, very intrigued. But she does rightfully say that she's living in the glory of no one hearing the album yet. So she knows what the album fares already. Like, she knows what the album is at this point in the interview, and she knows what she's working with, basically. Yeah. So yeah, she talks a lot about that as well, and then she talks a lot about like fame also being something very, crazy for her. Sometimes like, she has to take a step back and have to like be in the house by herself and feel, comfortable. Um, yeah, so she talks a lot about that. She does talk also a bit like about the songwriting process, about like how it's very cathartic for her, and it's very much like, a very hands-on process for her now, where she like knows what to pick and what to like write on, and what to just, whenever she's just basically generating a lot of songs. And I can tell from this interview she really found her element in the, I guess like the moment of production for Short and Sweet. So I think she learned a lot from that, and she's applying it to this album too. So very intrigued by that. Yeah, so she's really making a point here in saying basically that her brain is still very witty and still very smart and very quick with it, and her body's still like, allowing her to do a lot of these things. So she says, well, like, why should I wait and let these moments fade? Like, if I'm on 100, why should I just wait, and maybe waste my efforts and like, all that stuff. She said like she just wants to keep going, and just, it's a very beautiful time for her, she said, and like she wants to soak it up and keep making things that make her feel this way, basically. Yeah, so I find these like, bits and pieces very intriguing to me. Like, it definitely at least makes me feel like, she she knows what she's doing, at least, and like she's very much inspired by the process. And maybe it's gonna be a good thing. Like, we're gonna get some more interesting stuff. And she does talk also slightly about her influences. There's a bit of, Fleetwood Mac, where she plays basically during the Cold Plunge interview that she does in March, still for Rolling Stone. She says that, well, the interviewer says that she played Fleetwood Mac, Stevie Wonder, all that. But also I think there's a part where she talks a lot about ABBA, which is something that I've been seeing and I've talked about also in Short and Sweet, like Juno, for example. So definitely there is an influence there, and it makes me think like there is going to be a bit more of that exploration in the upcoming album. So yeah, very, very excited for that. At least that part seems also very interesting for me as well. I just would love to have another single as well. Just want to know what we're dealing with, because I like Manchild, but I think I want to hear another song. I want to hear something different also, and see where it goes. And yeah, I mean, the interview itself was very interesting. I think it's like, there's of course a lot of talk about like who the songs are about and all that stuff, and how that's very diminishing for her to like, have always to be scrutinized so much as a woman. And that makes so much sense. I think we should have been moving past this, like, sort of discussion and prying on her private life and all that stuff. So that's also very interesting to me. I really, resonate like with what she's saying. Yeah, that's, an incredible part of the article. I think I really liked that part a lot. Yeah, so I mean, I think overall what I really got from this is that she is basically wanting to like continue this over, like she's in a very like generative space, and she wants to keep like writing, and she has a lot that she's already sitting on, and she wants to like, just like, put it out. And she has a vision, I guess, and like, a cohesive album at least that she has in mind for this. So I'm excited to see the product, and I'm very curious to see how the conversation evolves with these like, next few months before the album comes out. I'm hoping for a July release, maybe for like another single, and I guess we'll see what happens with it. But yeah, just keep slaying and have a great week. I'm really looking forward to new music soon. I hope Doja Cat also releases, because I'm very excited about that. And apparently Jack Antonoff produced that song too, Jealous Type. So I'm excited. But anyways, slay. Love you. Bye.